be it, wanna feel it.
Recently, the U.S. signed the Security of Supplies Arrangement with India, and India is not alone in this. It is one of 17 countries that have entered into this agreement. SOSA is a non-binding agreement between the U.S. and its partner countries, including India, to ensure priority access to critical defense items from one another during supply chain disruptions, thereby helping maintain military readiness and promote interoperability. Former Pentagon official Michael Rubin has hailed this as a miracle, since the agreement has faced no congressional resistance, achieving consensus in Washington. But is this agreement truly beneficial for India? Or are there ulterior motives behind it? Let's dive deeper into this agreement to assess if it's really a game-changer for India. On paper, the agreement looks promising. If India faces a crisis or urgent military need, SOSA ensures that the U.S. will give priority to India for defense-related supplies. This includes critical spare parts, technology, or equipment needed to keep India's military operational during conflicts or supply disruptions. In the event of global disruptions, SOSA will help India avoid delays in receiving crucial defense goods, similar to what India recently experienced with the F-404 engines for its 4.5 Gen fighter, the Tejas. But how can the U.S. guarantee priority access to its defense market for SOSA signing countries? Under the Defense Priorities and Allocation System, the U.S. can direct its defense industry to prioritize orders from SOSA partners, ensuring that these countries receive necessary equipment, even in the face of supply chain disruptions. This system mandates that critical orders for U.S. national security and allied nations are fulfilled first, regardless of other commercial commitments. Moreover, the U.S. maintains strategic stockpiles of critical defense materials and parts. In times of crisis, it can tap into these reserves to meet the needs of SOSA partners and quickly provide equipment. This includes spare parts for jets, munitions, and other military supplies. The U.S. defense industry is also capable of scaling up production rapidly when needed. This will likely result in closer military relations between India and the U.S., which is a positive step, particularly in light of the China threat. It promotes cooperation between the defense industries of India and the U.S., potentially leading to technology transfers, co-production, and joint development of advanced military systems like drones, jet engines, and other technologies. If Indian defense companies face production delays or shortages, they can leverage U.S. resources to keep their projects on track, strengthening India's defense manufacturing sector. In short, this agreement seems great for India. However, there may be hidden ulterior motives lurking behind it. By signing agreements like SOSA, the U.S. gains greater influence over India's military strategies and decisions. How, you may ask? If India becomes heavily reliant on U.S. parts or technology for certain defense platforms, the U.S. could potentially delay or withhold supplies, influencing India's operational readiness or response times. Take, for example, the Apache AH-64 attack helicopter, which India purchased from the U.S. It relies on a complex network of U.S.-manufactured parts, such as main rotor components, avionics systems, engine components, and weapon systems. If one of these key components malfunctions, the helicopter would be grounded until replacements are available. In a conflict scenario, this reliance on U.S. parts becomes a strategic concern. Imagine a situation where India and Pakistan are engaged in a military conflict, and India needs replacement parts to keep its Apaches operational. Without those parts, a significant portion of India's Apache fleet could be grounded. Since SOSA is a non-binding agreement, its scope could be selective, meaning the U.S. might prioritize supporting India in situations involving a common adversary like China. In contrast, in a conflict with Pakistan, the U.S. might be more cautious due to Pakistan's historical ties with the U.S. and the strategic importance of South Asian stability. Pakistan is already deeply influenced by China, and the U.S. may not want to lose the remaining influence it holds in Pakistan. The U.S. could also potentially mediate between India and Pakistan to prevent conflict escalation, rather than fully supporting one side militarily. By controlling the flow of critical spare parts, the U.S. gains indirect leverage over India's military decisions. Furthermore, the U.S. likely sees SOSA as a way to further integrate India's defense industrial base with its own, potentially sidelining Russia in the process. Unlike most other U.S. SOSA partners, India does not have a reciprocal defense procurement agreement with the United States. This is significant because an RDP agreement would ensure that Indian companies have reciprocal access to the U.S. defense market without being subject to the restrictions of the Buy American Act. Without such an agreement, Indian companies may face difficulties in selling their products to the U.S. defense sector, limiting the practical benefits of SOSA. There's also the possibility of the U.S. applying pressure during conflicts, as it has done with Israel in the past. For example, former U.S. President Ronald Reagan delayed the delivery of fighter jets and munitions to Israel due to dissatisfaction with Israel's intervention in Lebanon. Similarly, former President George W. Bush delayed $10 billion in housing loan guarantees to Israel to prevent American money from being used to finance settlements in the West Bank. While SOSA aims to promote interoperability between U.S. and Indian forces, it could also push India toward using systems that align more with U.S. strategic objectives than its own. This might lead to India favoring U.S.-compatible systems, reducing its flexibility in procuring equipment from other nations like Russia, France, or Israel. What is India doing or can do to retain its strategic autonomy? India, along with Singapore and South Korea, stands out as a country that has signed SOSA without an accompanying RDP agreement. This places India in a unique position, where it must carefully manage its relationship with the U.S. to derive meaningful benefits from SOSA without compromising its strategic autonomy. India could push for the conclusion of an RDP agreement to ensure reciprocal access to each other's defense markets, helping Indian companies enter the U.S. defense sector and addressing the limitations of SOSA in its current form. Indian policymakers are well aware that deeper military cooperation with the U.S. could increase U.S. influence over India's strategic decisions. Hence, India is prioritizing collaboration with other nations, such as South Korea for self-propelled guns, France for helicopters and fighter jet engines, Russia for fighter jets, and Israel for radars and drones. By diversifying its defense partnerships, co-developing critical technologies with these countries, and building a localized supply chain, India can mitigate the risks of over-reliance on the U.S. defense industry. India has been pushing for greater indigenization of its defense sector through initiatives like Make in India. As the economy grows, increased funding for research and development in defense can lead to advanced technologies and indigenous solutions. Even the U.S. relies on a global supply chain for certain components, and India's goal should be to develop a robust local defense supply chain, train skilled personnel, and establish a network of suppliers and manufacturers. This would reduce the risk of over-reliance on any single country or technology, providing India with strategic flexibility. India can also focus on developing core technologies such as engines for fighter jets and ships, which are critical for national security, while leveraging international partnerships for areas where full indigenization remains challenging.